Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hipfire Podcast. So it's been a bit of time since our last podcast, and a lot has happened. We've got a lot to cover from the Elite Series Challengers and Cups, and obviously our first stage before the major for the first major. So tons of action, and we're gonna break it down for you guys. Kind of give our thoughts of who impressed, who stood out, and what moments stood out in the AM scene and stuff like that. And just before we start, though, we do have our episodes on Spotify, as I mentioned before. So if you're more of a audio person, go check that out there. And as always, all of our highlights that we gather from the cups and the AM scene all goes up on Twitter. So if you ever want to, just browse through some clips, you can check it out there. So let's get into it. So yeah, we had the first week of action, or first couple weeks of action because of the snow, and it was quite fun. I had a really good time watching the matches, and to start of that, I just wanted to reference a tweet that we actually tweeted out earlier, which said basically that this ain't a coin flip league. There certain teams are definitely ahead based on individual talent and teamwork, and you could see it. I mean, we had a lot of COD to watch, and over the course of those matches, you can start to tell who the best teams are and who the better players are. You know, and what I think what Octane meant when he said it's a coin flip league, there are certain things that you can point to where competition's tighter, where it's just as like less teams in the league means that more like going to 12 now means that there should be more competitive, right? And then also the guns are supposedly really good in this game or whatever, but it does feel like it's a very competitive league, which is a good thing. And I personally think that the fact that we have consistent top teams that are sort of the expected ones is also a good thing. It shouldn't be just anyone can be anyone. I don't think personally, because then it doesn't seem like there's enough the skill gap or whatever. But the fact that you have teams that can show how dominant they are and show how they can play the game better than someone else, I think is more enjoyable. And also because it's so competitive, there are room for upsets. That's kind of my initial thoughts with what we saw this weekend. But how about you, Yasser?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. It's obviously it's going to be a lot closer this year with the league having less teams. The talent pool is a lot more tighter. It's going to be a lot more closer. With the 4v4 meta, and we saw this back in World War II and past 4v4 boots on the ground Call of Duties. It doesn't necessarily mean that the most talented team is always going to win if you can get outplayed, if certain setups are played. I mean, like EG at Champs at World War II was that team. They weren't necessarily the most talented, but they were very strong in S&D. They had strong setups, and as a result, they were able to win. So it just goes to show you that that can happen still even in this day and age. That wasn't too long ago. But with regards to how this past week went, I think a team that impressed everyone was New York and Asim in particular. I mean, people are talking about him being a top 5 player in the game now, and rightfully so. He's been extremely talented and has warranted that. I mean, when you looked at New York's first match against 100 Thieves and they lost 3-0, it was a very close 3-0. I mean, if you look at that series in particular, they could have won every single one of those maps. And they had a lot of strong setups. It was just towards the end of those maps, there was either a lack of communication or they didn't have a lot of time together. And as a result, they sort of broke down, and you'd see 100 Thieves take advantage of that. And then in these other series, even though we still see instances of that, lack of finish, they're still a very strong team. And we saw that against Dallas. I saw them 3-0 the Rocker very convincingly. I mean, you see it in these kinds of matchups. And Asen being a big part of that. Just to give some context, I mean, you look at the S&D kill leaders. He's fifth at a 1.35. He's I think fourth in terms of hardcore KD with a 1.17. He's been extremely efficient. He's a 1.35 in S&D. I mean, this guy is constantly being aggressive and winning the majority of his gunfights. So whenever your entry's playing that well, it makes everything easy on the rest of the team. Clay, as well as putting up insane stats. I think he's atop the league in KD or close to it. Diamond Khan, who apparently is shot calling their S&D. I mean, keep in mind, this guy's only been playing as a pro for a month now, and he's top 5 in KD. He's helping out Clay, as Clay's mentioned in the past, and he's putting in a lot of work in both respawn and S&D. And then you have Mac, who seems to be more comfortable now in the support sub role, and you see them sort of on a roll now, and I think that's why I wanted to highlight them. They're 4-2 in S&D, 4-3 in hardpoint, 3-2 in control. So across the board, they're pretty strong in every single game mode, particularly S&D. In fact, the only S&D they've lost is Miami. So, if they ban that map, realistically, they haven't lost in any other S&D map. So that's, a very positive note for themselves. So, very strong team. Again, their only losses were a reverse sweep to Dallas and, their first opening match. So I have a feeling that this is going to be a team. I know we're going to talk about later, but this is going to be a team I think to watch out for. But who else impressed you, Seth?
Well, just one more thing on New York. I know Hydra's been a big point of discussion because his visa is ready. He's coming to the U.S. and everyone's very excited for Hydra to play. And I mean, we've been super high on Hydra from last year, and I've been singing like his praises for forever. It feels like, but there is an expectation for him and how good he's going to be. That being said, I agree with Yas that New York's looked really good, so I don't expect him to start right away. I don't understand kind of why people thought he would. It's not like he's going to immediately fit into the team right away. However, he is that talented that I do feel that he will start at some point this year. Right? It's not going
Oh
to be
no,
right
without a
away.
doubt.
Yeah, right. So yeah, and how I'm wanting some more hot takes. So I'll try to get a little bit more of that
No,
going.
he's
So
going to start this year, and he's going to help this team win an event like
I
that.
was
If
gonna say
you
yeah,
want a hot take, that is the hot take. He's
I
going
was
to
gonna
help
say
them win
that
an event
yeah,
easily. Because
yeah.
I get the whole point that he's always not going to start right away. But with that kid on the talent, or with the talent that kid has, unless New York is down, I'm not saying right away, but I'm saying down the line, whether it be the next second major or even third major, if they're not winning them or placing top three, why would they keep that roster when they have this incredibly talented kid that they could input and potentially win one? I think if it comes to the point where they can't overcome those hurdles or win a major, Hydra's going to be the guy that's going to be able to do that. So that's all I want to say. But let's move on. I think another team
Okay.
that impressed us was Los Angeles Guerrillas. Obviously, I don't think anyone expected them to be third in that group. People give them a lot of flack for their roster, for having Silly and Assault, and people don't think they're the same kind of players they may have used to be. But they finished third with a 2-3 record, so they did have a losing record. So got to keep that in mind. In fact, they only won 38%. Only won 38% of the maps. Okay, I didn't even know that. So not necessarily the greatest of showings from them, but there are some positives that I think, because I'm not mistaken, they're playing the Thieves first. Um,
Oof.
they're going to be a team that I think people shouldn't sleep on for a couple of reasons. So people don't watch I Hold Shift or know about a series, the playbook. I think you should if you're genuinely is interested in learning about how the maps work, how map pressure works, how teams are breaking down. Because what he does on the playbook is that he breaks down matches after they happen and breaks down the setups, the breaks, and what teams are doing right and wrong. And one thing he noted about Los Angeles or Gorillas from the time that they played Chicago to when they played the Ultra was that the numerous changes they made in their gameplay from one series to the next in a couple of days. I mean, in S&D, he was talking about how in Moscow S&D, how instead of Apathy challenging mid by himself, he had Apathy look over him, and then Apathy would just check for information. And if Apathy didn't see anything, he'd push Eskies and help collapse on that bomb site. Or if he did see something, he'd back up and wait for Assault to get his help. And it's just small like adjustments that they make like that help them win that map and help them win that series. And I think, while I wouldn't predict them to beat the Los Angeles Thieves, I think they will prove to be more of a challenge than anyone expects. I honestly expect it. If the Thieves, if that map, if that series goes to map 5, I think the Gorillas are going to take it. And I think it could. All the Gorillas have to do is steal a respawn, in my opinion. And that thing can go map 5, and I think the Gorillas could potentially upset the Thieves. But yeah, it's just my thoughts on them.
Well, even thinking about the LAG without looking at their maps, if you just want to look at the roster, and you think about a game that's a little bit slower, a little bit more pre-aimy on headies. I mean, I don't mind having Assault and Silly in my team. It sounds kind of good. Um, but uh, but yeah, no, it's a good point that you mentioned how they are changing things up, and I think that speaks a lot to Bevels as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think we saw what he could do in World War II as a coach, and even as a player, like back in the era days and the early World War II days. I mean, like that team were known for their poor streak usage, but in terms of like other aspects of the game, they were obviously very good in S&D. and they had different strats down. So I think like for him, maybe the thing was last year, right? Was they didn't only won like 4 dominations right the whole year, and it was not looking good. And the team just couldn't get it together. And when I saw that happening, for me it reflected a little bit poorly on Pebbles. But maybe that wasn't fair. Maybe the team wasn't listening. They couldn't find good teamwork regardless of who was coaching them. So now with people that he's already coached in the past, there should be a good level of understanding of we should listen to this guy. He won us a championship or helped us to win a championship, right? So I expect them to be a really, really well planned and thought out team. However, against the firepower the 100 Thieves have, I am worried, especially if it goes to like a Moscow S&D or whatever, because TJ Haley went like 12-0 on that map. It just seems like they could be as prepared as you want, but when you come up against talent like the 100 Thieves roster has, it might just slap you in the face, But we'll see. I agree with Yas. If they pull off the upset, it's gonna have to be in a game 5. But moving on past lag, we're gonna talk about the Empire and specifically Hook. I think it's pretty arguable, but I'm happy to say that
He's
Hook's
the best player in the game.
Yeah, he's the best player in the game right now. He's IGLing and frying, and it's a great thing to watch. And to think that guy almost went to go play Valorant is just atrocious. God, that's awful. I'd be so upset right now. If there's like an alternate universe where he did leave to go play Valorant, that'd be awful. But he's here, and he is playing very well. And it's funny because I don't think he was like bad at all last year. The only thing I had an issue with him last year was S&D specifically because he would get caught in really weird positions really early in rounds and get first blooded a lot, especially on you know what? Modern version of the past. Let's not talk about it. But he would get caught mid map a lot, and he would get caught in bad positions. But this year, maybe 4v4 is a little bit easier in S&D to get into positions than last year. You've got less people watching different lanes. I don't know. I could just be waffling, but for the most part, he's looked amazing. I think his natural skill plus IGLing, it makes him like a really, really, really top, like high commodity player, like MVP worthy. Even more so than, someone that's just dropping numbers. Not that he's doing that on top of calling, it's just impressive. But what do you make of Dallas?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the nail. I mean, you'll watch him how he plays and and even when you listen into the comms, how active in the comms he is. He's constantly calling out where players are, where to push on the map. His awareness is second to none. I think one of the key plays, even in their match against the Thieves yesterday, was when they were on P2 on rotation to P3, there was like 30 seconds or 20 seconds left on P2, and Krim spawns in like good for P2. He spawns in the back, and Q recognizes this. He pushes up through mid, gets a couple kills, goes on rotation, and essentially wins the rotation by himself. But it was that awareness not to wrap back to hill, but to push out and to go straight towards P3 in order to help his team spawn there. It was just so smart, and he always wins all these gunfights. So, again, gonna be hard to take a guy like that down, especially if he he's playing at that level. I think he's the best player in the game. But moving forward to teams/players that disappointed us, I know people have been awaiting me to talk about the Ultra, and I'm going to talk about them.
Go ahead.
But I'm going to try and talk about them from an unbiased standpoint because I know personally I'm not the biggest fans of bans and methods. But so let's look at how their series went. So they first play Florida. Everyone knows they win that match. It was a very important match for them. Everyone expected either Florida or the Ultra to be the third place in that group. So winning that matchup was key. Gave them the head-to-head on that team, and it showed that they were capable of taking respawns and hard points off that team. I think even Nameless said they looked like one of the better hard point teams, which is kind of funny now looking back at that. And also they took the S&D. And then they have the gauntlet where they have to play both FaZe and Optic, and they lose both of them, losing every single respawn, but they won both the S&Ds. And looking back at those matchups, obviously the FaZe matchup, the first hard point was a bit, gut wrenching, where FaZe got a very fortunate spawn and had a 4-way pinch on P5, and as a result, the Ultra couldn't really do much and lost that series, or lost that map rather. And then the S&D, they pulled it back, but again, the thing is their control is so poor. In fact, they're only playing one control map right now because of how bad it is. To give you some context, the Ultra played Florida, their first match against Garrison, got beat. And ever since then, the next 4 matches, they've all been on control, or raid control rather. they don't play checkmate, which we saw in the kickoff classic they got demolished in. So I'm assuming that's their permanent ban. And as a result, they've been playing raid over and over and over. And they only won it once, which is funny because that the one time they did win that control, they fucking lost the series anyways. So, overall, their team play throughout the week has been extremely poor. Uh, again, referencing Schiff's playbook series, I've been watching a lot of his breakdowns in the Ultra, and one thing to notice about them is that they really have poor teamwork. One, they're extremely slow as a team. They're when they get 4 players down, they're not quick to recognize that they need to push up and get map pressure, and because they don't get that map pressure, they allow teams to come back into hills and come back into games. And that's why you see all their hard points so close and so back and forth, because they don't apply map pressure when they should be. It's very frustrating. I mean, guys like Kleenex, it seems like he's too fast at times. Guys like Zen and Bance, they're constantly pre-aiming things instead of helping push with the team. And it's like, it's mind-boggling why they have such poor teamwork. It looked as if they were getting worse as the week got on, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
They
it
were
did.
playing the same maps and they got worse. Explain that. They played they played raid hardpoint 3 times. They played it throughout the week, lost every single time.
That
They looked
P5,
worse
man.
as it went on. Like, they'd get better on certain hills, like their P4 against Optic on raid was bad. They fixed that against LAG, but they didn't fix their fucking P5 against LAG. In fact, Shift showed a breakdown. They were being such an aggressive hold on P5. They had 1 laundry, 1 under bedroom, and 2 hill. And the 2 guys in hill die, and because the guy in laundry and guy in the bedroom are not close enough to
Why are
help,
they so pushed out? That makes no
they
sense.
yeah, they fucking lose the hill right away. And Shift's
Uh,
like, this is how you should be holding it. He shows how LG held it, and they held it the entire time because they were a lot more tighter in their setup. And it's just like, what the hell are you doing? How are you allowed to play like this? So even from a fundamental standpoint, the Ultra are not playing very well. Then you look at the individual stats. So obviously everyone talks about S&D being their strongest game mode, which I find very interesting because it turns out they have one of the lowest first blood rates. I think they actually have the lowest first blood rate of any team in the CDL. They get first blood 34.5% of the time. Factor in Bance gets first blood 1.7% of the time. This guy does not get first bloods ever.
he's clutch.
1.7% is horrendous. Yes, he's clutch, but the way he's also the shot caller in S&D, which is kind of funny, but he's not the one pushing up. It's
Yeah.
Cammy or Kleenex. If Cammy and Kleenex are not pushing up in S&D, they're not getting a single kill. Because
Yep.
Zinni's back somewhere pre-aiming. Vance is all alone by himself. And so it's up to Cammy and Kleenex to open up sites for them. And because they're not playing together, it's going to cost them in S&D, and it hurts them. And it's so crazy to me that this team has to rely on such individual play to win maps, because they shouldn't be, because they're not a team that can do that.
Yeah. Well, I
And
was
even
gonna add. I was just gonna add. Also, preseason, we graded them as meh before the really early predictions, and the
yeah,
reason why we did is because we were upset that there wasn't a roster change, or at least the prospect of one, right? Insight got picked up after our predictions, and that made us a little bit happier. But just the idea that you roll the same squad you had last year, that only won one event and didn't look that great outside of that event, and you rolled the same exact roster, we're not feeling super great about that. We'd rather them see someone pick up someone young like Afro, right, or something like that. But we're okay. They built up chemistry last year. They can go into this year with that. And now you're going to come into this year and not even have the chemistry, not even play like a team. Like, that makes no sense to me. Like, if teamwork's the problem, it's not acceptable, because that's the whole point of not making a change, was that you're
mhm.
supposed to have the camaraderie and the team, or yada 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 from last year. So if you're not even having, you don't even have that. Like, I don't understand what's going on. But that being said, I don't know what the answer is. I don't really think it's a roster change, because, again, right, the roles are not that badly defined. Like, everyone kind of knows what they're supposed to do. It's just about putting it together. And I think they can do it without a drastic roster change, but I'm putting it on a time clock.
Yeah,
That's
that's the thing. I don't think a roster change is going to solve all their
no.
problems. I think it will solve some of their problems, with regards to pacing, in particular. But again, there's still fundamental issues with this team. I heard from a source, can't name them, that they scrimmed once this entire week. So don't know what was up with
The hell are
that.
they doing?
That can't happen again because they're playing like shit. And honestly, even though they finished fifth, they might as well have deserved to finish last because that series against Florida was the only series that impressed me that entire week. It was a very poor performance from a lot of the players. Kleenex was the only one, in my opinion, that
He was
had a
playing
good
well.
week. He played
Yeah.
well. He had one bad series, but throughout the rest, I enjoyed the way he was playing. I think he was playing right. Zinni had his moments. So did Cammy and Bance, but quite frankly, as a team, they just played poorly, and I'm going to leave it at that. If
All right.
if they lose this match to London, there needs to be a serious conversation about whether this four is going to be the four that you have moving forward. Because if not, you're basically going to chalk up your season. But that's just what I think.
Yeah, so moving on, you mentioned London there. I want to talk a little bit about London, not too long, because the whole zero situation makes it hard to be hard on London, because obviously it's not the team they want.
No, I disagree.
But I was going to continue. I was going to say, but um, you drop the Twins, right? So you get fourth last year at Champs. You drop the Twins, made the controversial decision to not keep them on, and you go and you trust Dylan and you pick up Alex, right? And you're saying, okay, we're gonna have a really competitive sub duo. Where are they? What's happened? Like, how are they this consistently not good enough? Like, they're Dylan. Like, I defended them all last year, and I still want to defend them because I just remember the reciprocity days and how glory they were. But you know what? Like, you got to
Side
step up.
topic: has there ever been this much of a fall off from a
I
player
don't
from
know.
one title to the other? Because Dylan, I've never seen a player open up their beginning season
But the
like
thing,
Dylan does, and then have not even close to the same impact the next two seasons. It's not even.
you're right, but the thing is, like, he is still individually talented. Like, you could see moments of it where you're like, "Ah, it's a nasty snap," but it's way too much like Pristini in World War II. Like, before they dropped Silly, there was a moment where Pristini would just like chow everything, and he was playing way too fast. I feel like that's like Dylan all the time, and it's not just like a play. Like, there's one moment I want to mention, like on Raid. I'm pretty sure it was Raid. Is off the break of a hard point or control, and Dylan gets 3 kills right off the rip with an XM4. And I was like, you know what? That might be the fix. Just throw an AR on him. You can't play as fast. Just like force him to slow down. Maybe that'll fix the situation. But regardless, if there wasn't COVID right now, I'd fully expect like guys like Afro and Nasty to be on the team. Like, I don't think that it's hard right now because of visas. If there wasn't the visa issue,
That's
I
the
don't
thing.
think Dylan would
What
be
are
on the
they?
team right
What are
now.
they gonna do though? Because even when Zero eventually does come here, which it doesn't look anytime soon, because he's now started scrimming with EU challenging
Yeah, I
teams.
saw that. Yeah.
So what's the fix, right?
Well, so
Are they
the
gonna go after
fix,
someone in an A?
yeah.
Because
Well, yeah, I was gonna say like the fix can't be, oh, we have visa issues. We're just gonna chalk like half the season up. I don't think that's okay. I don't think you could really do that, especially because there's so much talent in NA as it is. Like, there are guys to go for. I don't know what the contract situation is. I don't really like the whole idea of like a 1 week contract. I'm not sure a lot of AM players would go for that. If you have to commit to somebody long term, you might as well do it now before you wait and they get snatched up. So I think they should make some changes. I think Dylan should be up for debate, and I think Alex is fine. He's consistent enough. It's just not good enough. Like, if you drop the Twins and go for the sub duo has to be the main part of the team, and it's not right now, and that's not good enough. It's kind of my take.
yeah, no, 100%, I agree with you. But I think the last team we want to talk about that disappointed is Florida. Obviously, last in this group, 6 map wins. Holy shit! Didn't realize it was that bad. On par with their group.
With Seattle.
Again, high expectations. They had beaten FaZe in the kickoff classic. Again, it's preseason, but that's impressive. And then you look at their stats in S&D, a team that I would
Big
expect to
Wake.
be very strong in S&D, and they're quite shocking. Just going through Carson's Twitter because he does First Blood leaders. Awakening is third at 2.05 in First Bloods. I believe he's getting it. Yeah, I think First Bloods per 9 rounds. He had a 71.43% win rate. So he's winning
God
the
damn.
majority of First Bloods. I think I also saw a stat, like a multi-kill in S&D, that he was towards the top as well. So not only was he getting, here, breaking point. So in stage 1, percentage rounds with multi-kills in S&D, Awakening first at 34%. Second is Abizi at 26.7. So Awakening by far is getting all the work done in terms of First Bloods, in terms of multi-kills in S&D. No one is doing it as well as he is.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple. He gets 63.8% of rounds with a kill. He's getting a kill almost 64% of the time, which is second next to Dashi. So you have that guy going off in SD, constantly getting first blood. Even Skies, I think, was top of first blood. And yet they lose the majority of the S&Ds that they play. They're 1-4. How do you have a player getting you first blood that often and then going 1-4? It doesn't make any sense how you squander man advantage consistently. I mean, Skies in Slack, 0.66 and 0.68 in S&D, that's not going to cut it. That
Nope.
is simply not going to cut it. How are you doing that when you have man advantage? That should not be happening. It doesn't make any sense. Wake has almost 40% of their kills in S&D. It's wild. It doesn't add up. Like, how are you? Like, they have to seriously reevaluate, because they should be, by all means, with these stats, a top S&D team. They need to really seriously reevaluate how they're playing S&D, because that cannot simply happen.
Well,
And then you look,
I was gonna say, one thing that could fix their search is Havoc. Havoc was a top search player in Black Ops 4. He's been a top search player his entire career. He built his career on search, and you bench him, and your search looks like that. Just something
I
to
don't
think
even think,
about.
like, yeah, Havoc would help. I don't think you need Havoc in this scenario, though. It's
No,
not
I,
that they're
I
not
know.
getting
Just
first
I'm really
bloods.
upset that he's not playing still. It's just personal.
Well, I mean, Havoc might come in for Slacks with the way Slack's been playing. I mean, just to, he's been a player that I want to highlight as got disappointed. To give some context, worst hardpoint KD according to colleague stats, Slack 0.81.
That's not
Uh,
okay. He's better than that.
it's the worst. He has the least amount of percentage of or team kill percentage. He has 20.11, which is the worst. Uh, so he's not even holding his weight. I think his weight would be 25%. Usually, if everyone's getting kills, 25%, he's getting 20%. So quite low. He's getting kill time at the very least, so there's that. But his engagements are also not high for a guy that's a sub player. Granted, some sub players like Scump also don't have high engagement numbers, so make of that as you will. But again, he's also tied for third last in S&D KD. So last in last in hardpoint, bottom third in S&D, and he's also bottom six in control.
I
So
thought he was doing
he's
well in
just
control. God damn.
0.92 according to colleague
Ugh.
stats. So he's not doing well on any front.
Well,
Um,
the thing with Slack though is like if he is shot calling and he does get timely kills, like you'll notice he'll get like a really important two piece or something like that. So there is that going for him. But you're right. Like if it's that far behind, then I don't know if it's worth the IGLing. Especially if they're 1-4.
yeah. They're 1-4. I
Yeah.
mean, again, stats aren't everything, but if you're consistently losing gunfights at a rate that's towards the bottom of the league, you can't really expect much. You're gonna need the others to have monster performances to do well. I mean, one of the reasons why they had so much success, like sustained success, I mean, or consistent success, was with a guy like Pharaoh, was because Pharaoh was so aggressive and he was winning majority of these gunfights. And that allowed guys like Skies to get into power positions and just look down lanes and do what he does best. I don't think you can attribute all of Skies' lack of success early on to Slack being poor, but I think it's a part of it. Um, you know, so I don't think Slack will be on this team much longer if he keeps that up. In fact,
Especially with Havoc on the bench, like it just makes no sense.
that's true. Granted, I don't even know what Havoc's been doing. Has he been like playing the game?
He played this weekend with the team, but I think they got like top 16 at in the cup, I think, or something like
Honestly, I
that.
wouldn't be surprised if Florida started looking towards, maybe, because Florida's the type of team that I think we both expect to like look outside.
Oh,
Um,
they're trigger happy with the end players.
yeah, they could get
So,
they went on Awakening. They
yep.
had Neptune.
Even
Maybe they
Pharaoh.
go after someone, yeah, Pharaoh.
Yeah.
So maybe they go after a guy like Venom. Who knows?
I don't
But
know.
yeah,
I'm a little hesitant because I know you like the idea of Venom Neptune. I don't know because they're both just so young. That's why I'm a little.
I get that. I obviously it even there's the whole fact that Slack has the veteran leadership. He's been
Right,
playing
because
for a while.
they'd both be rookies as a sub duo. It's just a little scary, but
I think it's worth I think it's worth the risk. I think you can
okay.
at least test it out. I
That's
don't
fair.
like I get it, but like there's no harm in trying it because I mean they're literally
They're
last.
one
So
and four.
what do
Yeah.
they have to fucking lose? Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, let's move on to the AM recaps. Obviously, we had
Okay.
the Rams and New York win. So, what did you make of the Rams team?
Yeah. So starting with the Rams, it's basically been them and Orglis as like the top two in Europe lately, It's kind of merging to be those two. And the Rams, Nvidian, he's that's like I always when I watch the Rams, I always focus on him because he makes and breaks games. Like when he has a great game, where not even great, if he even like does like keeps it up, they win. And like he makes really smart plays and really good plays. There was a
He
specific
he
series
looked good.
against.
He looked good though during
He
the lead
did.
series.
I was gonna say he looked great all the way up until the grand finals when he almost got shit on in top five.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So I'm mostly joking. He has been playing a lot better, and that's been a huge part of their success, right? Because initially,
Mhm.
when they were having success, it was with Nvidia not stepping up, and now that he has, it's been a lot better. There's a specific moment against Singularity on Control to close the. I think it was a 3-0 as well in that series, and to close the map out, they each of them went on like 3 different 5 streaks or 10 streaks. It was crazy, but he made this play on Control where he was on offense and he got to their back jungle and he killed like 5 or 6 guys back jungle to cap D and just played his life brilliantly. Got a bunch of kills that were important, and it was really nice to see him make those kind of plays. And I think like with him stepping up the way he has, it's made this team that much even more strong. Especially considering we've heard from Paj in the past that these guys are the best teamwork in Europe, and you can see it. And with him also
Mhm.
slaying as well, it's just disgusting. And Journey might be the best player in Europe. Again, guys like Afro and Nasty do exist, but Journey is really good. But what do you make of
He's up
the
there.
Rams? Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think you hit the major points. Obviously, their teamwork is can't be underestimated. Nvidia, and you talk about that play. It's funny because one thing
oh
I
my
actually
god,
noticed watching him is that he likes to flank a lot.
yeah,
So not surprising that he's able to put himself in that position. I mean, looking at the stats from their finals against Orglis, obviously insanely close, round 11 map. He had a 1.05, which is good for him considering he's usually negative. So great for him. He played very well throughout the entire league series. Orglis, they are the ones that ended up taking, if I'm not mistaken, the Elite Series this week. So, props to them.
I
Obviously,
mean the
they've
Cup.
been the Cup. Yeah, the Cup. I mean,
Yeah,
the Cup 8. They look extremely talented. Nasty and Vortex, my God, as a subduer, insane.
yeah,
Harry is like the perfect flex, and Josh is like the ideal shot caller as your main AR. So, they have all the right pieces. Honestly, if it went another way, they could have won this grand finals. So I expect them. I said they were the team to beat, and I think they will be, even though the Rams won this one. But yeah, no, these are definitely the top 2 teams right now. I think if you're looking at other teams that contend, obviously we now know that Eric Boom is going to be filling in for Hydra on the new
I'm very
Trainheart team.
excited for that.
Very excited to see. Obviously, for those that don't know, a little bit about Eric Boom. Extremely talented, arguably in my opinion, the second best player from Spain right now behind Journey. As a sub, he isn't necessarily as fast paced or cracked out as you'd expect most amateur players to be. He's a little bit more cerebral, as you've said in the past, Seth. But
Yeah, for
his
sure.
shot is a laser beam. It's extremely straight. It doesn't look like his gun moves, like it has no recoil. Which I mean, I understand the guns in this game don't have recoil, whatnot. But like when you watch his gameplay, it's noticeable compared to other players how straight his shot is. Incredibly talented. Obviously, he's gonna have some adjustments, being that he'll have to do comms in English now. But again, I think he'll mesh really well with that roster with Henry, Kezin, and Whalers, and I expect them to be another team that can come out and challenge Orglis and Rams.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like another thing about these young guys in Europe, like, even like Hydra's, a guy to keep in mind as well. I feel like a lot of the young players aren't only super cracked, and they also have good game sense because they've also been competing in like a bunch of tournaments in Europe. I don't know if it's because you do have local lands in North America, but it seems like the top teams, the top players in Europe that are young, seem to be the ones that consistently win those tournaments over there in Europe, like the SFCO, whatever they're called, tournaments, and like the different like master stuff they have. So a lot of these guys are used to competing at a pretty high level, so they don't have to rely on the cracked gun skill. Like, is in NA, sometimes you do, when especially in these online cups, like you want to put up the numbers so people can notice you. But over there in Europe, in these tournaments, they're more structured, and you play with vets as well. You're not just playing with youngsters in a lot of these tournaments. So I think getting that practice and getting used to competition also helps them develop as they're younger players. So just something to keep in mind. But moving on to North America, we saw. I guess you could say it was an upset, although it's pretty much top two. But New York
Yeah,
Subliners won the Elite Series. I would consider it an upset. I think West Star were still favored.
I think also
Uh,
the way they won it in, right? Because they
Yeah, true.
They
Actually.
reverse swept UT Crew. They were on the brink of losing. Reverse swept, went round 11, map 5, won that, and then they beat Wester 3-0.
Yep.
Right? Was it 3-0?
I don't
Or am I
honestly. I don't
forgetting it
remember.
wrong?
There's so many matches that it just gets bogged down. But either way, like I mean,
Oh, it
we've been
was
singing.
3-1, 3-1.
It's 3-1. Okay, yeah, we've been singing like Spart's praises all year, and we know what we expect from Nato. And I mean, Prolo's been a guy again for a long time now. Like even Glowfrost, like all these guys have like it's not a surprise that they're playing this well and playing competitively. The question I have is they're looking great and they look like an arguably top team, but when Hydra comes back or is in North America and he's not on the starting lineup, what does New York do? Do they want to put him on this team and replace
I
somebody
don't think
here?
so. I don't
Okay,
think they'll do
I was
that.
wondering that.
I don't think it. I'd have Hydra play with play with whoever he wants.
Okay.
Um, I don't think I'd have him play on the academy team. I think what you have going right now with the chemistry you have built, like
Hmm.
who are you going to say, hey, Hydra's here, we're gonna replace you? I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think it should happen. With
Yeah.
regards to their performance, like you mentioned, I think because we saw them play Wester during their like regular season matches, and Wester smoked them. So it's going to be curious to see what changes we saw, and quite frankly, like New York just came out like really hot. I mean, the first hard point they nearly smoked them. I mean, Gravity had a .62. He wasn't doing well. You know, as a team, they just weren't able to keep up with Hamza and Spart because with their ARs, though that AR duo really held it down in the first hard point, and even the second S&D they were able to clutch out. It was only when Paul literally like went 28-10 and carried his roster to a map 3 win that they showed some sign of life, but it was like a very uncharacteristic loss of Western, and we're seeing more of that as of late. With that loss, their loss to UT where they got 3-0'd during the regular season, even their loss in the like most previous cup where they didn't even make top 8 or whatnot. So, and although there's cheating accusations as there always
Oh
is,
God.
but
Yeah.
we're seeing more and more that this team is a lot more vulnerable than they have looked at earlier in the season. While they're still, in my opinion, the best team in NA, um, I don't think it's going to be a surprise anymore if the teams start beating them on a regular basis.
Well, there's a lot of good teams and players in NA right now. Like even the team that won the last cup, Insight's team, that was thrown together probably within a week, right? Because I don't think they
Yeah,
played together last cup, so that was kind of impressive how fast they would have put together. And speaking of the team that won the last cup, just to wrap up our thoughts here, I just don't want to go for too long, but Twerk,
yeah,
I am so happy. So I've known about Twerk for quite a while, as I expect many of you guys as well. If you follow the S&D scene, he's been around for a good long time now, and he's trying his hand at Variant, giving it a shot, and he looked pretty damn good right out of the gates. Especially playing well like in S&D in the cups. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on these S&D kids sometimes, like where you switch to variant and you have to keep the S&D up because that's what you're supposed to be good at. And if that falters, then it's like, well, what's the point, right? But he definitely stepped up in every game mode, but also in S&D, and it's great. I love it. I think that you know, I you could pretty confidently say that some AM teams and S&D stars play Search better than the pros. So I still advocate for if you're not going to put like S&D subs in the game, and I understand that. I still advocate for picking up like a bench player or somebody on the team as an S&D kid, just to scrim or like help with strats or just help with like mid round adjustments because I think it is a coachable thing. I personally think it is, and having a guy like why not pick up Twerk and have him critique your S&D for like a week or something? Just give it a shot. But and anyways, it was nice to see him play well, and it was good to see him, Onyx, Prolute, like all these guys that I've known for such a long time, like play well in Variant. It's just nice to see.
no, 100%. It was very cool to see those guys end up taking the cup again, triumph. It feels like a broken record. These guys cannot,
Oh
for
God, yeah.
whatever reason, close out a series. Holy shit! Like if it makes me sad for those guys because they
Standy's
have
so good.
talent, yeah,
Yeah.
but they just for whatever reason have that's been their theme. They can't close out a series for whatever
Well, we even saw
reason.
people asking like, "How is Standy doing this year?" Just because they haven't seen enough of him. He barely makes it to a Sunday,
And even
right?
when
He's
it
been
does,
the
he chokes. They
yeah.
choke. Like I still remember
Yeah.
that choke against New York early on in the season. But you know, with that being said, let's move on and end the show with our preview and
Oh,
our
sure.
picks for the CDL major. Obviously,
Almost forgot
the
about that.
first major of the season. Going to be interesting starting this Wednesday. I'm going to go out and, people have said we don't do hot takes on this show. And you know what? I think with the time that they're given, you know what? Fuck it. With the time that they give them to practice, I'm picking New York to win the entire event. I
Oh my
think,
god.
I think, it may be early considering they haven't had a lot of time to practice. But from the signs that we've seen from them in S&D and Hardpoint, the way that they're playing together, my faith in Clay's ability to shot call this team, I think they're going to win the entire thing. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. I think Optic is in for a rude awakening, not the awakening the player, but Mac and Asen.
Uh,
Going to be pretty intense. I think that S&D in particular is going to be what carries them through, and I think they're going to win this entire event.
all right. Well, I disagree. Um, but I actually don't think it's going to be FaZe or Empire. I think it's going to be the Thieves that take the event. I am a little biased. I am a Kenny fan, so I'll take it for granted. But
Well,
I
even
think
after the 3-0 that they got.
even after the 3-0, so I think the 3-0 actually could help them, because I think Dallas was looking kind of weak, and maybe they got caught off guard a little bit by them playing so well. But I mean, they're Dallas; they shouldn't have. But either way, I still think they don't have to play them until winners finals, so they can take that there. But I do think the Thieves have looked really great this past week. TJ especially in S&D, like the World War II TJ, World War II Kenny, they're back, and Temps frying. It's all looking great. They can gotta get a little more consistent, and I think they're really good. Like I really am confident in the Thieves. And my other hot take is that I think Legion will place top four. I don't know if they can get past that. It's a bit tough, but I think they'll make the loser bracket run, and we'll see consistent improvement for them going forwards. I still think it's a bit of a hodgepodge team kind of mashed together, and I know they've had time to practice, but it's not going to be an easy kind of. It's hard to force players to play together that didn't really want to, and it kind of seems that was the scenario for Paris. But given them some more time, I think they can emerge quite good, especially the way that Aqu was playing. Like Yuli's gunning, right? So, and they have to play either the Surge or Mutineers. I'm not worried there, you know.
Well, I don't,
So I
I
think
don't
they
think
have
the Mutineers could fix some of their problems. I think
maybe, but I'm not super confident in that. But what about you? How do you like in the loser bracket? Who do you think kind of makes it out of that group?
I think the Rocker. Um,
Okay,
yeah, I
that's fair.
think I want to see more of them. They looked very strong early on. Obviously, they took down the Empire, which was very impressive. Their S and
Hmm.
D, although it looked very shaky against New York, I think is still very strong. Um,
How do
they'll.
you feel? Sorry to cut you off here, but how do you
Yeah,
feel
no,
about
no, no,
Priesthood
go ahead.
attaches the subs? Like how do you feel about that?
I
We've
think I
had a
want
whole
to
week
see
now.
more of a sample
Okay.
size before. Like I want to see after this major where they're at individually and at as a team, because obviously I think from the limited I saw of them from their matches against Dallas and Seattle, they looked okay. They didn't,
Hmm.
but obviously then they end up playing the Thieves in New York and get demolished. So I'm very curious, to see how they play in this sort of setting because they could have been third had, Seattle somehow beat New York. But yeah, I think it's a bit early, obviously, and that's why I
Hmm.
don't think like a team like the Ultras should make a roster change right away, is because
Right.
it is early. But if they lose to the Ravens, good God, good
But it's
Lord.
just one more quick thought on the Rock I just thought of right now. But like, what's weird is like when you have a guy like Priesta, and this is something we talked about before, and I've always kind of talked about with Priesta specifically, is when you have a guy that can flex and run like any role, that's like kind of their best quality. It does feel though that sometimes you want to put them in a position where they can also like you want to get the most out of them, basically, right? So we had the same conversation last year with the phase when Priesta started switching roles because it was like, okay, do we want to set up Celium to be in the role that he wants to be in, or Priesta? How do we kind of tease that apart, or do we want to force Mage Manic on a different role? It is almost difficult to figure out sometimes when you have a guy that is like a Swiss Army knife, but you want to see him really excel in whatever he does because he's that talented. It almost makes me wonder if Priesta will be better suited as an AR and as a flex, and if they were to drop somebody, maybe be Mike. I know it's tough because Mike's probably your S&D caller and is a very good search player. And I'm not saying they should drop anybody; they looked fine. What I am saying though is when it comes down to roles and things like that, and having Priest to run a sub and he hasn't looked super comfortable. So I mean, they can obviously iron that out and figure it out, but everyone else on that team has looked comfortable so far. Priest is the only one where he has really good maps and some like not so good maps, and it just feels a little bit off to me. But I don't know. It's just like again, like Yas said, not a huge sample size yet.
Yeah, that should wrap up our thoughts. Obviously, tried to condense everything that happened in the past week into
It was a lot.
one
Yeah.
one episode, which is quite difficult to do. But yeah, it should be interesting to see the major season 2.
Let's
We're
get
gonna
it.
try and do some more content like this, get it up quicker. But yeah,
Yeah, we had some midterms.
yeah, bit of
Yeah.
busy week, but should be interesting. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys in the next one.
Yep. See you guys.